Sami al-Arian joins us in the studio, Director of the Center for Islam and Global Affairs at Istanbul Sabahattin Zaim University. Sami, thank you so much for coming in on Sunday. This is not new, but how significant is it in terms of Israel presumably is not short of land for any residents who would like a home. So this political project, how much has it been expanding over the past few years? Benjamin Netanyahu first became Prime Minister in 1996.
Right, 1996 was 3 years after Oslo, and then he stayed there for 3 years, and then he came back in 2009, almost now continuously with the exception of a couple of years. What happens is that the number of settlers during Oslo was 120,000. Today there are over 800,000. And of course that is not a prelude to any kind of a Palestinian state or a two-state solution. So they were intent from the very beginning not to have any viable Palestinian state. But more importantly, if you look at the American plan, which Trump came up with in 2020, which is the ultimate solution to his current Trump plan, it does not call for any dismantlement of the settlements. It recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. It recognizes Golan Heights as annexed to Israel. It calls for the Israeli control, military control of the Jordan Valley. It's basically embodies what's happening now and keeps them in terms of the settlements. Therefore, there isn't any kind of a two-state solution, even eventually if we come to that plan.
Which is exactly what Bezalel Smotrich, far-right finance minister, himself an illegal settler, he says this will make sure there is never a Palestinian state. And yet the Emir of Qatar, one of the main mediating nations, just said 10 days ago or so, what the UN has been saying, what so many others are saying, is that without addressing the situation in the occupied West Bank and occupied East Jerusalem, how can there actually be a viable peace plan for Gaza? How is it possible, Sami, to have any plan for the future of Palestinians in Gaza without taking into account what Israel is doing in other occupied territories?
You can't. And there is also a dilemma. There is a problem for Israel because Israel does not have a Jewish majority in the land between the river and the sea. So their solution was to take advantage of what happened October the 7th and embark on genocide. They were hoping to displace or mass expel the Palestinians from Gaza. That failed. Israel's objectives in that regard completely failed, and therefore they will be unable to establish a greater Israel. And that's what they're trying to do now in the West Bank, except that they will have an apartheid state. And if they have an apartheid state, I don't believe that the world will accept that over the long term, and therefore Israel is in a real dilemma. And if they can't displace the Palestinians, either from Gaza or the West Bank, and if they can't, or the world does not accept apartheid, what will be the ultimate solution? There will be no solution because we cannot have a two-state solution. Certainly they're not going to go for one state with one man, one vote, because that will basically dissolve the Zionist idea of a Jewish state, and therefore we're going to end up with the status quo, and the status quo is unsustainable.
So much talk. Oscar was speaking to the mayor there, Yahya al-Sarraj, about the stalled peace process. We're still in a nominal ceasefire while Israel continues to kill the people of Gaza. Do you think actually that this ceasefire deal kind of becomes less important compared to the 3 years we have left of the Trump presidency? Are these 3 years critical for the state of Israel and its far-right government and the longer-term vision it has for its own future at the expense of Palestinians? 3 years left of Trump.
Actually, I believe Trump probably has 1 year, because next year there will be midterm elections, and most likely the House of Representatives is going to turn Democrats. So his hand will be tied in terms of his domestic agenda. Yes, he will have freedom about the foreign policy part of it, but he is not going to have the same mandate that he has now. At any rate, what Israel has basically is a very difficult situation because they cannot impose a one-state solution, and they cannot, with the current trajectory of what's going to happen with the Trump plan, there is not going to be a real solution because Israel want to make sure that it's going to impose its agenda, and it's not aligned with Trump's agenda, and therefore we're not going to have a real progress in Gaza. And if we don't have real progress in Gaza, you're not going to have any solution for the Palestinians, and you're going to end up with a situation where it's going to be worse of what it is now, strategically speaking. They are trying to convince the Americans that they can strike at Iran, strike at Lebanon, strike at Syria, and therefore they can basically be the hegemon in the region. But that is going to also complicate America's strategic situations in the region.
Is there a lack of unity amongst Palestinian political parties? Is there more unity needed to find a collective approach to this?
Definitely unity is needed, and I say that the Palestinians in Gaza are pretty much united, and they have already agreed on a technical committee that can take over the governance in Gaza. The real problem has always been the Palestinian Authority, because it is really doing the bidding of the Americans and the Israelis. It hasn't really been the real representative of the Palestinians. When they met in Beijing, in Moscow, in Algeria, in different places, they sign an agreement. Even Fatah signs that agreement, and then Mahmoud Abbas comes back and basically abrogates this agreement. And now he wants to hold elections by making sure he's isolating and everyone else, because they said you have to agree on everything I agreed to with the Israelis in order to be elected or to be a candidate. And none of these factions are willing to do that, because basically he has succumbed to all Israeli conditions, including some of the outrageous conditions that the Israelis have been asking the Palestinian Authority to do, including changing the curriculum, changing all kinds of social services. None of that would be accepted, and therefore he's trying to basically keep away all these factions so that he can only run by himself.
Sami, thank you so much for coming in. Really appreciate the analysis.
Thank you.